Okay. We are officially recording now. Again, Chris McKinney, I'm an education specialist situated in Region 1 in Edinburgh, Texas. And we have a guest speaker from New York City today. He's going to talk to you about Yale and the admissions process and things to do to help prepare you to get into an Ivy League or an out-of-state school if you're interested. And I would like for you to take some notes perhaps, and there's going to be some question and answer. He's just going to kind of take over and open up. I have a lot of cameras enabled, so awesome job. Thank you, because we like to see our participants and who those people that are participating are. We would love for you to either use the chat feature. If you don't have a camera, I will be moderating the chat room for any kind of specific questions that you might have. If you do have a camera, obviously the microphone's going to be near the camera, so you might need to set a chair up or something and go up and ask those questions, and we'll take turns answering. Once again, I'll turn it over to Johnny, and before I was kind of talk about the room, we have Albert Ramos over Monte Alto. We have Selena Barrera Scott. Shout out to Brownsville veterans. We have Rio Grande City High School. Melissa Lopez. We have Salinas, which is La Villa Early College High School. Araceli Rios and United at Laredo. LBJ, we have Santa Rosa. We have Weslaco, San Benito, and Yoli, another office person here at Region 1. If you do, again, use the chat feature, let us know. I will mute you as new schools come on. I'll mute so that we don't have interference. But either you can unmute when you have a question, or I'll unmute you at the appropriate time. Any questions before we get started? Everybody have a thumbs up? We're ready to get started? Excellent. Thank you for participating. JC, take it away, sir.
Okay, everyone. So if you have any problems hearing by any means, please let me know. So my name is Juan Carlos Salinas. I go also by Johnny, or I go also by JC. I am originally from Rio Grande City, Texas. Some of you I know that I've met with before, and some of this will be repetition, but I'm going to try and include as much new stuff as I have learned this semester. So just my brief background is I am from Rio Grande City. I went to undergraduate at University of Texas, and then I went to graduate school at Yale University. I live in New York City, and currently I am Director of Education for a place called Jamaica Center for Arts and Learning, and I'm also an education specialist for a place called South Asian Youth Action. Now, on the side, I am the chair of the Yale Latino Alumni Association for the tri-state area, which is New York, Connecticut, New Jersey. And I'm the secretary of the national organization, which is a nonprofit. Living in New York City, about 5 years ago, we started a group called ILAC, which stands for Inter-Ivy League Latino Alumni Council, which is basically a lot of Latino alumni from the Ivy League school system, plus not just Ivy Leagues, like other great schools. And it's not to be exclusive, it's just that there's been so few of us, you know, we know such few people that have the same experiences as we do, so we kind of started an organization. Now, all this said, you know, about 6 years ago, I started an organization called Y Tú También, which is basically, most of you know what that stands for, Y Tú También. It's a program where Latino alumni from most of the Ivy League schools, and again, other great schools, or just people who want to contribute and donate, we help students get into the colleges of their choice and need. We do focus a lot on the Ivy League, but we help with all school applications. And I'll tell you that the reason we started this is that, you know, because again, so many of us were told that we couldn't apply, that we didn't belong at these schools, but you know, somebody believed in us and worked out. So again, Y Tú También is now in its 6th year. We have students at all the Ivy Leagues, but not just the Ivies, but we have a lot of great schools, Emory, UC Berkeley, Stanford, you know. So again, the idea is, again, we want to encourage kids that like this can be done. I know that this is particularly daunting if you're in South Texas or Texas period, because I know that being from Texas, we all have a lot of Texas pride. And I grew up thinking that, you know, UT, A&M were like the best school systems, which they are great. They have large endowments. UT has the 3rd largest endowment behind Harvard and Yale. Rice is another great school. But we were just never taught to dream big. Now, in high school, for me, that was pre-internet age. However, by the time I got to grad school, I was in the internet age, so it was easier to look for information, to talk to people, to get all sorts of things going. So, our goal for this, and when I visited in South Texas, my goal is to consider these things an option, because basically, again, I know that there's this fear like, I can't afford, I'm not good enough. These are all just mental barriers that you're setting up for yourself, because for the most part, when I went to UT Austin, tuition was like $1,200 a semester. By the time I left, it was $1,800 a semester. Now the tuition, and I'm talking about tuition alone. Now tuition alone is somewhere between $8,000 and $12,000, I think. Whereas, the Ivies, if your parents make $65,000 or less, there's no cost to you. Or, you can, even if they make 100, 150, the total bill can still be somewhere between $15,000 and $20,000 for room, board, tuition, everything, which is what you would pay for a public school. So, when the public schools have caught up to the private schools in cost, there's a problem. And at the same time, if you're going to be $20,000 in debt for Harvard or $20,000 in debt for Rice or A&M, which one would you rather go to? So, again, that's something that I want people to think about as applying for out-of-state or great schools. The other thing is, if you look, I know you should never trust the college rankings, just U.S. News and World Report and all that, because there's a lot of fluff and hype and so on about that. However, if you look at the state school system, if you look at California and how highly ranked so many California schools are, and, in Texas, again, you basically have Rice, A&M, UT, you start to see that, maybe Texas isn't an educational powerhouse. So another point of consideration is that I know people say, well, I look at the SAT and ACT scores that these schools have, and I'm not in that range. And I'm like, you know what? It's not just about SAT scores. That's one factor. There's 3 pillars. There's your GPA, which what I understand most of the people in this conference call probably have a really good, solid GPA. There is test scores. Different admissions officers look at these things differently, even within the same school. Columbia University, I know one officer who doesn't really care if you have a good GPA and solid everything else. If your SAT scores are not great, but just okay, he's fine with that. On the other hand, I know that some look at it and they use it sort of as like, well, is he going to be able to compete here? So again, there's no one single determining factor. It is a combination of things. And what's the harm in trying? As I mentioned last time I spoke to a lot of you, you've worked so hard in high school. Why do you not deserve to have the best going forward? So, you deserve a chance to compete nationally. What's the worst that can happen? They can tell you no. If you do stay in Texas, there are great schools. And, by all means, if you want to go to South Texas College, if you want to go to UT, Rio Grande Valley, that is fine. If that is the option that's available for you and the right match that's for you, great. However, don't be afraid to aim for better. Again, these are great schools. And if that's the right match for you, so be it. But I think we all know deep down in your heart, the President of the United States is not going to come out of one of these schools, in theory. And I don't want that to sound elitist or condescending, because I realize it does have that thing. But other people, you have to understand that in other parts of the country, when people think about Texas and education, they're like, well, isn't it ranked near the bottom? And truth is, yes, there are elite high schools in Texas that continuously send kids to really great schools. But there is this kind of feel that like, well, there's great inflation in South Texas. There's particular, people have 115 GPAs, but then get a 23 on the ACT. So again, they get suspicious about stuff like that. Going back to the pillars, like I said, grades, test scores, then there's everything else. It's the diversity that you bring to a school, to a university, and it's not just your racial or ethnic diversity. It's what am I, all these schools have to turn away thousands of people that would succeed and that are qualified, and they turn them away simply because there's not enough space. So what you have to argue for is why you deserve that seat, that space more than, somebody else. And the idea is, this is what makes me unique. this is why I'm going to come here. You know, how are you going to enrich the student body? But at the same time, you also have to address why you want to go to that school. Don't just apply to Harvard as a long shot. You have to actually do your research. Like, who are the professors that you want to study with at Harvard? Who are the alumni that have gone to Harvard that inspire you? Or again, that goes for Dartmouth, Brown, Cornell. You know, again, you have to be specific as to why you want these schools. Another thing that just dawned on me, speaking to Hidalgo last time and also to Rio Grande City, I should have corrected something, which is some of you, you're going to apply to mostly state Texas local schools, and then you're going to list Harvard. You know, you're going to do Harvard as that one reach school, right? That's fine, but ideally, you should apply to more than one IB, because the admissions officer can look at your financial aid form and they can see through your FAFSA what schools you will be applying to. So they'll be able to deduce sort of like, well, you know what, he's applying to Harvard as a long shot, so that means, you know, it's maybe like a hidden wish, but he's not that determined to come out here. Whereas if you apply to, you know, 2 or 3 IBs, they're like, okay, he believes in himself, he's competitive, he thinks he's competitive, so that's a good positive sign. So again, don't just apply to one IB as a fluke. I would say, you know, apply to 2, 3. You know, you can maybe do 2 on the top end, which is Harvard, Yale, Princeton, and then 2 on the bottom end, which is more like Cornell, Dartmouth, and Brown. Although, be warned, you know, Cornell, we always joke, we always make fun of them. We always tell them at our meetings, we tell them, you're the easiest to get into, but you're the hardest to graduate from, which is a, you know, reputation that Cornell has had for a very long time. So again, I don't know how many of you are doing early decision or early action. I think most of you know the difference. So if you're going to do it, go for it. You know, it all depends on how prepared you are. If you're not prepared, don't do it. Take your time. Wait till the end of December. Get your stuff ready. However, if you think you are ready, go for it. If you're worried about your parents not being excited, or, you know, a lot, let's face it, realistically, parents are the things that, you know, are the ones that are like, oh. My mom, you know, my family, as progressive as they are, my mother was like, you know, you have to go to Texas, somewhere in Texas for 2 years, and afterwards, if you want to transfer somewhere, fine. Well, of course, I went to UT Austin. I fell in love with it. So I didn't want to leave after 2 years, right? And that's what's going to end up happening most of the time. My father, on the other hand, was like, nope, go wherever you want. You know, but of course, we all know that in those cases, mom usually wins. So I'm trying to think what else. So as you're preparing, again, for everything, the biggest thing I can stress is really do point out to colleges why you deserve that seat over someone else who might even have a better grade or a better test score. But what are you going to bring to that school? You know, that's something to be very unique about. I do a couple of interviewing exercises with my students. The one that I'm most proud of right now is that, you know, I make everyone, the one question you always have to be prepared to answer is, tell me about yourself, right? That question can be interpreted so many ways. So one new thing that I have is when I tell a student, tell me about yourself, you are not allowed to talk about your academics, anything in your school. It has to be completely outside of your school. It has to be completely outside of the realm of academics, because realistically, that's what's going to make you interesting. Of course, your transcript will be on file. They'll be able to tell that. They'll be able to see your test scores. There will be plenty of opportunities to talk about how you excel at academics. But again, what makes you interesting is usually something beyond academics. Think of the roommate test. Do I want to live with this person? There's so many people with perfect GPAs and perfect test scores that get rejected because people look at them and say, I don't want to live with that person. Like, yes, they're really smart, but I'm not going to be able to have a conversation with them. You know, they're just going to be a nerd stuck in a room reading a book. So, you know, they want someone who's going to bring diversity, someone who's going to, like, you know, make the campus a better place. I'm trying to think should I open it up to questions now?
That'd be great. That's a good stopping point. Let them kind of internalize some of the great advice that you had. I really like that. I hadn't heard that before about, you know, going for 2, 3, 4 Ivies, or, just to show that, hey, it's not a long shot, that I truly believe I have what it takes. That's excellent advice. Students, anybody, we'll take turns. You can kind of raise your hand, let us know, or you can chat a question, and we will be happy to have JC, Johnny, answer to the best of his ability.
Don't be shy.
Yeah, and I know you're muted right now, so I can go through. If you let me know which classroom that I can see, at least, I can go ahead and unmute and let the questions fly. Lavia, are you? Someone got up, but I guess they're not. But they're heading to the front microphone.
Anyone, guys, whether it be financial aid, where you're at in your essays, topics to avoid. Remember, your essay is not an academic paper. Oh, look, we have one.
It's from Weslaco. Why is higher education becoming a business? This is from Adan in Weslaco.
Okay. The problem is it's state funding that's becoming, as budget shortfalls has been. There was recently an article about this, and it was either the Washington Post or the New York Times, that the big spike in tuition has basically been the state cuts in funding. This holds true for Texas, I know. It's like, I know Texas is a Republican state, so what happens? You cut. So, of course, so what do? They pass the cost on to the consumer. Why do we tip waiters? Because the business is trying to avoid paying them a decent living wage. So, that's why it's like, oh, you pass the cost on to the consumer. So unfortunately, it is, and again, it is up to you once you get into these schools. Okay. It is up to you once you're in these schools to hold these schools accountable for keeping, things in check. Unfortunately, most of the times when students are in college, they get distracted and it's like, yeah, whatever, I'll pay. So now somebody posted about tuition waivers. Some of you, and this is where you have to turn to your college office in your high school. A lot of you should be eligible for fee waivers. So, I know that they can add up. So be strategic about, where you want to apply to. But again, my understanding is that a lot of you would be eligible for fee waivers, or you can, talk to a admissions office directly about the fee waiver. But again, it should be handled through your counselor or your college office in particular. By the way, some of you should look into fly-in programs, right? So many of these schools, if you're low income, they have fly-in programs. They'll fly you and a family member in. They'll host you. They'll house you. It makes a huge difference when you can actually visit that school. Now, if you get in, there will be preview days at these schools. So your senior year, if you get in, towards the end of your senior year, you would go visit, and that would help you decide, like, is this the place I want to attend? And again, there's good financial aid available for that as well, too.
Okay, La Villa High School, let me unmute you. Go right ahead in the red jacket.
Hi, my name is Dominic Montalongo. I just wanted to ask, what's the percentage of kids of Hispanics that are actually attending the school, the Ivy League schools?
Okay, so if I understand correctly, that's what is the percentage of Latino students at schools, right?
In the Ivies, yes.
Yes, that varies, but it can be anywhere from 8% to 15%. So 15 is probably a little bit on the higher end, but so here's the other thing. Diversity is a good thing. Further proof that everything is not about grades and test scores. If everything was about tests and grade scores, the Ivies would probably be somewhere between 70 to 80% Asian. They're not. So what does that tell you? Grades and test scores are not everything. Diversity is very important, right? So one of the beauties of going to this place, I will tell you, when I first got to New Haven, Connecticut, I was in culture shock. It was the first time in my life I was not part of a majority. It was very pronounced that I was a minority. But all these schools have resources. So for example, Yale has a Latino cultural house. So the dean of Latino students, when I was there, was actually from Laredo, Texas. Her name was Rosalina Garcia. She's a VP for Student Affairs at Our Lady of the Lake now. She was at Yale for 12 years, you know. And now the new dean of Latino students is from San Marcos, Texas. She went to Texas State. And so anyway, there's plenty of resources. For the first time in your life, potentially, if you've been growing up in the Valley, Latinos will not be a majority. That's okay, because you're going to be exposed to true diversity. You will be with top students from across the world, not just the United States, but top students from across the world, and they will make you a better person, and in turn, you will make them a better person and a better community. But don't be concerned of like, well, there's only 15, you know, there's only 11% Latinos, so why should I apply? That's the completely wrong way to look at it.
Great answer. Good question. Thank you, Lavia, for asking that. Any other questions out there?
If there's no questions coming in yet, let me also just give you some advice on your essays, which is, you know, everybody's going to be tempted to write about mom, dad, tío, tía, grandma, grandpa. So one thing you have to start thinking about, every admissions officer has somewhere between 500 to 700 applications on their desk. You have to think about, you know, your admissions officer will probably be in charge of South Texas. They'll be reading applications for South Texas. You have to start thinking about how many people are going to be talking about violence on the border, violence in Mexico. You know, there are a lot of overdone topics. I always tell students, don't forget, you should show, you know, it's okay to have a sense of humor. Everybody starts writing their essays and they start with these like Lifetime television movie scripts, which is like, oh, the oppression Olympics, woe is me. No matter how bad you think you have it, somebody has it worse. So again, don't make it your job to guilt them into admissions, right? It's about tell a good story, practice, work together as teams, because I know that for some reason when it comes to academics, unlike sports, we all kind of retreat to our corners and say like, this is me, this is a private thing, I don't want to share my stories. It's a recipe for failure. You will be better off as a candidate if you share stuff with each other, you proofread each other's work, help each other out, be a sounding board for each other. And you'll see that your application will start getting a little bit stronger because, you know, people are going to catch mistakes that your mind will fix by itself. So, you know, again, it really helps to work as a team. And don't think like, well, I'm number 1, she's number 2, or I'm number 4, they're number 5. I don't want to help them or they shouldn't help me because they might take my spot. The more people that apply for one school, an admissions officer will notice and be like, oh, okay, we have a pool of candidates from here this time. You know, usually we get 1 or 2, but this year we have 7 or 8, you know.
Another question came in from Weslaco, Ms. Garcia's class.
Mm-hmm.
What is the recommended way to break away from a small city mentality without any outside experience for those that do not have the opportunity to travel further than 4 hours north?
Got it. Again, I'm from Rio Grande City, and, you know, yes, I was fortunate that my family, sometimes we went on vacations to, like, you know, further, but you know, we used to go on vacations to Mexico too, right? So basically, it's a global world now, guys. There's no excuse. There's no fear. I couldn't FaceTime. I couldn't use Zoom to talk to my parents, you know, in my day, but now I can. You guys have so much technology at your disposal. Sonia Sotomayor, who I've met because I went to Yale, before she was even a Supreme Court justice, you know, she, in one of her books, she wrote that the thing that holds Latino community back the most is fear. And that might be a very like broad general thing to throw out there, but she's right. It is fear that holds us back so much about trying this, doing that, daring to compete. So you have the opportunity to see how students live in other parts of the world now. You have the opportunity to see how students in other parts of the country live now just through YouTube. There's so much social media. So again, it's not like you're going to this vastly different place. The flight from Texas to, you know, the East Coast is roughly about 5 hours, maybe 4 hours. So you know, and again, schools do help you out with, you know, being to afford the plane trips to be able to go home for Christmas, the summer, that kind of stuff, you know. So again, the mentality, unfortunately, everyone has to overcome that over on their own. I'm a little bit on the tougher side. I'm like, you have to get over it. There are people who would kill for these opportunities. So you have to get that attitude too. Do you think the Asian community sits there and says like, well, you know, I'm not going to go. I got into Harvard, but I'm not going to go because I got to stay here. You know, there's my friends always, you know, because I have a lot of diverse friends here in New York City, and my Asian friends and my Jewish friends always tell me, you know, the one thing that the Black and Latino community have yet to grasp is that education at all costs. You know, it's whatever it takes. Education is the key to something. And some of you, because maybe you feel you've had a subpar education in South Texas, haven't made that connection. I will tell you that I have Asian students and friends who have not had great teachers, that have had horrible family experiences, that still manage to do this because the drive, they never lose sight of that goal. Education, education, education. Going to a great school is going to give me a better life versus just starting to work after. You know, I'm going to be able to contribute more money to my family having a 4-year degree from a great school than, you know, taking 8 years to graduate from the local school or something. I saw that there was a question from
Rio Grande. Great question. Is it true that college hours that they earn in high school, like through dual enrollment, won't transfer to out-of-state universities?
That is up to that you can't blanket. It's not just one, you know, they all won't follow one policy. Public schools might. Private schools tend to be a little, you know, and guys, I got to be honest with you. I fully support that decision because what your receipt, when I've seen curriculums from what they do in schools down there to, you know, what you see at MIT, Harvard, it's not fair. You know, that's why so many, you know, there's this movement to get rid of SAT and ACT. But again, they'll see, okay, you have these college hours, you have this great GPA, but you have a 23, 24 in your ACT. Meanwhile, this kid up here has no college hours, but they have a 34, 35, or 36. So they know there's going to be a disparity in education and what's being taught. I can tell you right now, most of the stuff that I learned in Texas, I don't want to say it was a joke, but it was gravy compared to, you know, when I got to the East Coast and I took like really tough, you know, in the East Coast, you're dealing with professors who wrote the textbook, are teaching you the class, you know, it's that kind of thing. So again, don't think of it as a bad thing, or don't think of it as I wasted all this time. It's just that, like, it's the difference between taking an average course and taking an like really advanced, gifted, and talented course. You know, so
will they give you elective credit, JC, at all? I mean, do you, like, if you take a course like a dual enrollment? I know AP, they will sometimes consider those.
Yeah, but you have to get a 5 usually on
Correct.
the AP. So for elective, again, probably not. But again, they don't all have one uniform thing. State schools might be more open to it, like public universities. However, private schools might be a little bit more reluctant to. But that you have to be like really aggressive with like the admissions office, or, you know. But again, you would start asking those questions once you got in. I realize that, you know, it's something you should be proud of, maybe graduating with an associate's by the time you graduate with your bachelor's. But at the same, I know that there's also this mentality in Texas, like, let's get you through college in like 3 years versus 4, you know, because that way you can save money or something. But there is something to be said to going to college for 4 years and having an actual 4 years worth of experience. You know, nobody wants to hire someone who's under 21 for big professional job unless it's medical. You know, grad schools are more reluctant to take people that are under the age of 21 unless you've, you know, proven yourself to be a child whiz or something. So, you know, there is something to be said about graduating after 21.
Great advice. And we're not discouraging you from taking these courses. It'll definitely help prepare you, but yes, you might have to take that algebra class again, or, you know, things of those natures.
That, and you know,
great question. Thank you for real.
It's funny that you say algebra. I have yet to hear anyone take less than calculus in college for whatever reason. So, you know, and also there's usually entrance exams, most of these schools, there will be some version of entrance exams, and that will help them gauge what you belong in, like at what level you should enter the university at.
Excellent. Any other questions? Either chat or if you want to answer a live question on camera.
Another word of advice, guys, just unless another question comes in, college has to be your priority. I just remember I've been in South Texas. I've seen it's all about sports. It's all about this, that, whatever. I mean, realistically, it's all about college. Less than 2% of the entire American population goes on to be a professional athlete. So you have to take that, you know, I marvel at how so many schools spend so much money on athletic programs, yet when it comes to SAT or ACT prep, there's that one class. When in reality, you should have been doing ACT, SAT prep since your freshman year. And I'm not telling you this, I'm not telling you this to feel bad about it, but what I'm saying is you still have time, but this has to be your focus, your day in, your day out. College, it needs to be all about that. Those 4 years will determine more than, you know, your current 4 years. You know, football's not going to get you a job. Band's not going to get you a job. But again, just stay focused on what really, really matters this semester. Because I know there's a lot of stuff coming at you and stuff like that, but, you know, you got to be ready to compete. And by the way, so, you know, those of you worried about SAT, ACT scores, you know, I know that, you know, they put it in perspective, right? So you don't have to have something in the 30s being from the Rio Grande Valley. Is it great? Yes. But if you have a 28, you have a 26, you can make an argument for that, you know. On the new SAT, you know, I think if anybody that has above, you know, again, there's not one set thing, but just know that, like, you know, you guys will say, well, the average SAT score is this. But it's like, well, what does the word average mean? It doesn't mean everybody has that. It just means that that's the average.
Great advice. Santa Rosa, I see you walking around near the camera. Are you interested in asking a question?
You didn't hear him? Oh, he saw
Santa
you.
Rosa, you have a question for us?
Matthew, get out of the way.
I guess not.
Mm-hmm.
Just taking a look out the window. Anyone else? Questions? Keep them coming. Great questions. What's the temperature like in New York right now?
Actually, thanks to global warming, it's not as cold as you would expect. We're like in the high 70s during the day, low 70s, early high 60s at night.
We're triple digits, like 80-something days in a row down here.
Yeah. By the way, guys,
79.
Texas was not that hot when I was growing up. So something, the planet's sick, in case you haven't figured it out. Oh, new question. What is that from Wesleco?
Okay, Wesleco. What can we do to make ourselves stand out on our resumes? I understand that everyone's taking AP and dual enrollment and is involved in extracurricular activities, but what else can we do to market ourselves? Great question.
Yes. So remember, I went back to one of my favorite essay prep questions is, tell me about yourself. You can't mention anything about school or academics or extracurriculars. Same principle. I hope that most of you, and it's okay if you haven't, there's no such thing as a wrong answer, whatever. Most of you have hopefully done something significant outside of high school, you know, outside of those four walls, whether it's been community service, whether you helped out at church, whether you helped out at this volunteer group or that volunteer group. In your resumes, use strong words like managed, led, created, assisted. You know, don't just say like participated in. You know, think of your leadership roles. All of these schools, they do kind of want leaders. They know that not everyone's going to be a leader, but they like to see that you've taken initiative, that you have been a leader, right? Okay.
Okay. So Brownsville had to take off. They have 6 weeks exam.
No problem. No problem.
Thank you, Salinas. Other classes, Rio, Mavia, Wesleco. Great questions so far. Let's keep them coming. Monte Alto.
I saw something, a new question about a degree.
Currently, yeah, field of study that is a sound investment to pursue.
Okay. I will tell you, it's always
Had done that for myself.
engineering, computer science, medicine, law. You know, those always are going to have high demand. That, however, you only get one life, and it's your life, so you should do what you're good at and when you're passionate about. So, for example, I work so much in education, and I always get frustrated that so many of my top kids here in New York City, nobody wants to be a teacher because all they think is, I'm underpaid, blah, 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 blah. By the way, pay rates in states every state has a different pay scale for teachers. So, you know, like I think in Connecticut, the starting rate's in the 50s versus, you know, other states it's in like the 40s or 30s or something like that. So, you know, but again, you got to do what you're good at. STEM fields are always going to be popular. However, if you want to be an actor, you want to be an actor, right? And it just means that you got to work harder. It just means that you got to be very resourceful and, you know, so don't be afraid to be what you want to do. You just have to balance it. Nowadays, you can also double major, right? So you can have that one serious major, and then you can have that other thing that's your passion as well, too. All my kids want to go into computer science. That's the one thing I'll tell you, because everybody here is obsessed with tech and startups. So again, there's nothing interesting to me. I mean, it's great, you know, when it's like, oh, wow, my kid created this app. That's awesome. But at the same time, it's not like a burning passion for me.
Yeah, I know with the advent of CSI and cybersecurity, that's been a real hot topic.
Okay.
Very lucrative.
Oh, I have a student applying to Yale, but is a Questbridge scholar, so she has listed Yale as one of her priority college match. Okay. So here's the problem. Just the way you stated that question about what do they want to hear from me. I have this really great friend that she went to Yale undergrad, Harvard Law, and she interviews a lot of students. And she talked about, again, kid with great GPA, perfect SAT score. I was like, I gave him a terrible review because he was trying to pretend to be someone he's not. You know, he thought, I'm going to say what I think the college admissions officer wants me to say. The whole thing about this is being yourself and being proud in who you are. You can't be anybody else other than who you are, right? So you have to come across as authentic. And you can't think of, and I run into, even with my top students who go to Stuyvesant High School here, which is like the Harvard of public schools, they're always like, I'm so boring. There's nothing interesting about me. But when I make them do that exercise of tell me about yourself, having nothing to do with school or academics, all of a sudden they come to life. They don't think it's interesting, but when we work in a group, I work very closely with a group of 10 students, like those are my adopted kids, and they kind of like formed, and that again, that's where it helps to work in teams. They're like, no, that is really interesting. That is really cool. You think that's stupid, but again, someone would be like, oh, that's interesting. So, you know, if you're doing Questbridge, that's great. You know, hopefully you'll match. You know, it's assumed through Questbridge that they would give you a great financial aid package. So, let's see. And the other thing you should, by the way, I don't know if I mentioned it, all of you should request interviews. You know, so once you submit your application, you are entitled to ask for an interview. It's really easy in New York because we all kind of live in a giant clump. It's a little harder in South Texas, but that said, there should still be something, you know, you should still ask, you know, really ask to do. San Antonio has a very good presence for, you know, alumni, but ask even and tell, you know, make it known that, you know, if you're in McAllen but can travel to Brownsville, if you're in Brownsville but can travel to, you know, Roma, make that known that you can travel like maybe 2 hours north or south for an interview, but be prepared to do interviews because whenever they're on the fence about you, the first thing they do is turn to the interview notes. And again, don't be shy. Don't be afraid. Don't be like, I'll tell you probably one of the most, I did a mock interview session with a student, and the first thing he did right out of the gate, I want to go to MIT because I'm really good at computer science, and let me tell you and show you what I've done in computer science. When again, that's not the way you naturally introduce yourself to someone. It's like, oh, I'm Juan Carlos. I'm from South Texas. I grew up right on the border of Mexico. You know, I've been this, then that. You know, it's the chit chat that makes you interesting, not the whole like, let me oversell myself. And also make yourself diverse. I said this at the last workshop, which is like, it's the football player who's also a ballet dancer. That's interesting. You know, it's that dichotomy that it's like, oh, okay, that's something different. You know, it's the, you know, it's the nerd who's also, I'm sorry, I shouldn't use the word nerd, but it's like, it's that very intelligent kid who's like also social and outgoing, who, you know, or it's, you know, those contrasts within you are what are going to make you stand out. So, okay, hold on. Certification subject, like the medical bill and resume. Hold on. Yeah, you know, I will tell you, it's funny. I work, so many of my, like, the teachers that I hire part-time to work in after-school programs. Hold on. There's two questions.
Two questions, yes.
Yeah, let me do the billing certification, and then I'll get back to whatever. So, the billing certificate, of course it helps on the resume. Anything that you did because it's your passion and you're good at, of course it's going to help, you know? Is it going to be make or break? Probably not. Does it help you? Yes. So, but again, as long as it's authentic, as long as it doesn't look like something you're trying to stick on there to seem more impressive for the sake of, I need this, I need that, you know? Yeah, because I think, I don't know if I mentioned it in my last session, which is, you know, the most overused sports are cross country and track. Everybody thinks that they have to have an athletic thing to be well-rounded. That's BS. I mean, you're not going to school to play sports. You're going to school to learn, you know? Again, they're not expecting you to become a professional athlete. That said, a school like Stanford, for whatever reason, produces a ton of, you know, professional athletes. So, you know, so the thing with Yale and Questbridge is that that's like a subset of the admissions committee that meets. It's very private, probably not, you know, open to a larger committee. So Questbridge is very, I have one student last year who didn't get into Questbridge. Yale was his first choice. He didn't match, he didn't get in. However, he got in under regular admission. So go figure, you know. It's one of those things, just because you, by the way, if you don't match, it doesn't mean that you're not going to get in regular decision. It just means that, you know, it's a very, they have like 5, from what I've been told, they have somewhere between 5 and 11 slots, you know, for Questbridge. And again, it's a smaller committee. It's a smaller group. I think I mentioned this last time. If you ever get a chance, see the movie Admissions with Tina Fey. Not a perfect interpretation of it, but there's some big moments of truth in there where, like, okay, yeah, it's kind of like that. You know, it's kind of like that. The way they come together in committee, because you have your admissions officer who, if he likes you, will advocate for you when it comes to committee. And then, you know, and by the way, you know, sometimes your admissions officer will be in their early 20s, just graduated from undergrad. Sometimes it's a person in their 40s, 50s who's been at the admissions office forever. You know, so you're not 100% sure who you're going to get. There's only so much you can control, you know. The important thing is, you know, not to be discouraged and not to be mousy about it. You have to be aggressive about this. So, you know, you can call, you know, so for example, the thing with Yale, call the La Casa Cultural, you know, Jean Galvez, and be like, hi, I have a student who's really interested in Yale, but we're a little bit worried because she's from South Texas and we don't know what the culture is like up there. You know, is there anything you can tell us about Latino student life at Yale? And even if you're not Latino, you can look, when you research universities, look at different departments for student life and pick the one that you think might speak to you. Try to get a hold of someone in the department and be like, you know, I'm a prospective student. I'm just wondering if you could give me a couple of pointers in terms of, like, you know, what to consider when applying to this school, you know.
Awesome. As I told you last night, you're going to have classes break because the bell rings. We just lost a couple. I think Lavia and Westaco and Brownsville had to head on to a different class.
Okay.
But we still have some tuned in, so we're not shutting down just yet. But it is 9:45, so we are keeping Johnny from work.
That's right.
I don't want you getting in trouble.
No, I've got potentially like 10 more minutes, so, you know.
Well, I hope not to take that much, but if there's questions, by all means, we're going to answer them.
By the way, teachers and Chris, if you could make sure that everybody gets this, there's 2 ways to stay in touch with me, which is the Facebook page, which is Y Tú También NYC, or you can email me, and you have my email, so please pass this out to everyone, ytutambien.ny gear.nyc@gmail.com. So on the Facebook page, I post a lot of like tips, advice. You know, if I'm reading a lot of essays and I'm seeing something that's being overdone or overused, I caution people, you know, like say, careful, you know. Scholarships, keep in mind that even most of these schools are need blind. They, you know, they don't give you stuff on merit. You can still apply for merit-based scholarships outside. So be aggressive about that. I told you guys last time on Facebook, the group Unraveled Education is very good about telling you what deadlines are each month. And they also give you other great little tips and advice there.
Yeah, no other questions are coming in. Any other? Yeah, some of the classrooms, it's hard to see those that are.
Closing thoughts, guys? Anything? Anyone? I mean, I can't see, but by show of hands, how many of you are pretty sure you're going to apply out of school? Out of state, sorry. By the way, a lot of out-of-state schools, you know, you'll see that the initial thing is like out-of-state tuition. If you do really well academically, a lot of those schools have the power to waive that, you know. University of Michigan, prime example of a great public university that, you know, a lot of students want to go there, and if you do well academically, they can give you full rides if you're out of state. So yeah, by the way, it's not just about the Ivies, and sorry for those that have left, but, and I've mentioned this before, Ivies, mini Ivies, hidden Ivies, and public Ivies. Those are the four big ones, right? So University of Texas is considered a public Ivy. It's the only public school in Texas that's considered an Ivy. So again, those four: Ivies, hidden Ivies, mini Ivies, and public Ivies. Also, some of you, sister schools, those are really great schools. You know, basically all the Ivy Leagues have a sister college. So for Columbia has Barnard, Harvard has Wellesley, you know, so there's all, and a lot of these schools, you can take classes, like at Barnard, you can take a ton of your classes at Columbia, and your degree at the end of it will say Columbia, but you really went to Barnard. It's one of those tricky things, you know, so the 7 sister schools can also come in very handy. There are schools that don't require SAT and ACT. I believe Reed College, which is an excellent college out in Oregon, has dropped that requirement. Hampshire College has dropped the ACT requirement. So, you know.
Excellent. Yeah, I think we are.
Okay.
We are through with most of this. Kids look to have changed classes, and we hope to get them back for the 10:30 session. I'll just, for those that are still out there and listening, we do have 3 more sessions at 10:30, 1 o'clock, and we're going to finish up at 2:30. And that's going to be another UT alum like Johnny. She's actually in law school right now.
Great. Stay in touch. You know how to get in touch with me if you need to. And again, somewhere in December, right after Christmas, I'll probably be hosting a little last-minute essay review, application review in McAllen somewhere.
Excellent.
But that information will get disseminated to all of you.
Excellent.
Great.
JC, thank you again for your time. I can't put it in words how much we appreciate you taking the time to share your message with all the Gear Up students across the valley. Absolutely. Don't be afraid. That's a bottom line. Be aggressive. Don't be afraid. Go for it. Dare to compete. Excellent. Okay, at this time, I'm going to stop recording. All right.